Welcome to another episode of Type PI TV, where we're looking at the inside workings of live operational investigation agency. I am Simon Henson, your host and Managing Director of Type Private Investigation Limited. Welcome. So in these short episodes, we are looking at being informative to subscribers, or maybe this is the first time you have seen one of our episodes. Not trying to give too much away, but discussing points which we think are of interest, of areas which we are asked to add content on, but also initially we were covering areas of what questions are we usually asked by prospective clients, so you can be educated before you talk to us. However, today's a little bit different. We're going to talk about tracing. We've covered tracing before, but what are the possible consequences of unethical person tracing, GPS vehicle tracking, and covert surveillance? So we have covered on a previous episode what could go wrong. In that episode, we looked at not utilising enough resources on a surveillance, i.e. using one and not two on a mobile surveillance, not hiring a true professional to do a bug sweep who have got the wrong equipment or not the correct equipment. Obviously, they could walk away or tell you it's clear when it's not. When a tracing agent is instructed, is it on a no trace, no fee, or are they going to say, sorry, we can't find them and you've lost your trace fee? Or have they actually tried to trace them and just said, sorry, we can't, and taken your money? So it's important to have a no trace, no fee. So you get a full refund if you don't get the results. And the fourth point we covered on what goes wrong is the consequences of instructing a rogue private investigator to hack a mobile phone. And we covered the various legislation which is committed even if the intent is to take the information off the phone but isn't. So this episode, we're going to be focusing on the possible consequences of doing a trace, an unethical trace, GPS vehicle tracking or surveillance. So there have been countless examples of unethical tracing which have been conducted and then there's been consequences. So I'm just going to look at two. The first one is what could have potentially happened, and the second one is looking at what did happen. So we're all aware of the Clapham chemical attack which happened on the 31st of January this year, where a female and two daughters were involved in an alkali attack, so a chemical attack in Clapham. The offender was a former partner of the victims, and that was Abdul Azidi. Abdul Azidi tracked his partner or former partner and children down. He lived in the Newcastle area, and they left and went to Clapham, and we believe that they were in a hostel. The chemical attack then happened, and we all know what happened to Azidi. He jumped into the Thames and his body was formally recognised at the end of February. What if a private investigator was given a legitimate reason to trace the female, and she was then traced to a hostel, and then the address was given, and then this horrific crime happens? So there's things that I'll come on to shortly, ways on which we can try and counter unethical or emotive traces. The second case, which has actually happened, which was in Worcester in 2018, where a private investigator tracked an individual down on behalf of the client, who was a former male partner, tracked down, GPS vehicle the tracker, so we got location and routine, and did some covert surveillance. The client then, on the 21st of July 2018, in Home Bargains in Worcester, performed a chemical attack on the 3-year-old child, burning them. The consequences are awful, so we need to make sure that we mitigate these emotive instructions. So how can we mitigate as far as possible any emotive traces, GPS vehicle trackings or surveillance operations? So when a client contacts us initially, we can generally get a feel for whether they're hiding things or not, whether they are being upfront or whether everything's a little bit weird. Any red flags, you can't put your finger on it, sorry, we can't help you. If those red flags haven't appeared immediately, we need to know their intentions and objectives. Are they lawful? Are we looking at stalking, or are we looking at an intent to harass, alarm or distress, which is obviously going to fall under the Protection from Harassment Act 1997. If that's the case, we can't do it. We then need to do a legitimacy interest assessment, easy for me to say, or LIA. This can be found on the ABI, I believe, but certainly on the IPI, which is the Institute of Professional Investigators. I think you can only see it if you're a member though. And I'll come on to the elements of that, or briefly in layman's term, what the elements of that are. So here at Titan, we would do a legitimate interest assessment, LIA. We would also then have a management of data audit trail. This basically audits all of or records all of the information from the first call to when the deployment, the tracking, the trace is finished. Once it's finished, what we've done with that information, has it been destroyed? If it's not been destroyed, when's the next review date to assess whether it should be destroyed? So it's tracked from the call right to the very end contact with the client and what information we've got left. So let's go back to the legitimate interest assessment. In layman's terms, we use two acronyms here at Titan. One's Japan and one's PLAN. So if we go through PLAN as a part of our legitimate interest assessment, is it proportionate? Is it lawful? Is it accountable? Is it proportionate? Is it appropriate? And is it necessary? If the answer to any of those is no, then we have to go back to the drawing board and think of another tactic and go through the process again. It might be that we use PLAN. Is it proportionate? Is it lawful? Is it accountable? And is it necessary? Once again, if the answer to those is no, then we need to go back to the drawing board and think of another tactic where the answer may be yes. It may be that we don't find a tactic that we can answer yes to, and it's sorry, we can't do this for you. All of this needs to be recorded though, and that is part of what we call the legitimate interest assessment. That protects you if things go wrong, there's a chemical attack or anything like that. And if that does happen, yes, you're going to feel extremely guilty, but at least you've gone through a process to try and vet what you've done is lawful, and you're not part of an accessory to what has happened, and you will just become a witness to the police investigation. Hope you found that interesting. I don't like to leave you on a bit of a down like that, but yeah. Thank you very much for listening. That's another episode of Titan PI TV. Please give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed that, and if you'd like to see more episodes and not miss them, subscribe to the channel. Till next time, thank you very much.